Hi, it's Carol Doherty. Welcome back. Today I want to talk about the benefits of advocating for yourself as a woman in STEM. The reality is we're often our own worst critics. We don't like to talk about what we've accomplished. We don't brag about what we've done, and we often wait for others to help us get where we want to go. Reality, that doesn't work. The only person who has our best interest first and foremost on their minds is ourselves. Our bosses aren't going to. Our companies are more worried about their bottom line and whatever metrics they're focusing on. And HR, and I love a lot of HR people, let me be clear. I love a lot of HR people, but HR's job is to protect the company from employment risks. So they're about hiring, firing, they take care of the salaries and all of that. But the odds are they're not in a position to help advance your career. They may be a resource to you, but that's not going to be their primary mission. And so, unfortunately, the best thing for you is to learn to speak up for yourself. Why that's a great thing to take it on for yourself is because you know yourself best. You know what you've done. You know what you've accomplished. You know where you want to go. Who knows all of this better than you? No one. So instead of waiting for somebody else, learn to talk about what you want and where you want to go. Be comfortable with talking about what you've accomplished. Now, if you think I'm being a little crazy, and you might, that's fair, watch some of your male peers. I bet they aren't hesitant to say, hey, boss, did you know I did this? Or, hey, boss, I want to move up to this. I think I'm ready because I've done all of these things. They're not afraid to say that. Little boys are taught to be bold. They're taught to be competitive. They're taught to go for the win. Little girls are all too often taught to take care of others, to collaborate, to be helpful, to be humble. That puts us at a disadvantage at work. It's not rude to say, hey, I'd like to do this. In fact, I just had a one-on-one client who was setting out her 1, 3, and 5-year plans as we worked together. And what she set for her 5-year plan, she outlined it for her boss, and her boss goes, this is great. I think you can be there at the end of 2 years. By getting her comfortable with saying, here's where I think I want to go, it opened her boss's eyes, and he's going to help her get there faster because he sees what she's doing. Now, how's that for a win? Isn't that what you would like? I've had a couple of times in my career where the organization asked us to think about what it is we wanted to do. One of them was map out from where you are now to the job you want to have when you retire. That was a little much, I'm going to be honest, because that was 20 some odd years for me. And where I was then, I couldn't have pictured 8 years earlier when I started working for that company. So to imagine 20 years forward, okay, I did it. It was great. And the interesting thing was it did help my boss and his boss see that I wanted to move up, but that I didn't want to be factory manager or some, inflated job because I didn't want that. But it showed them that I did want to move forward. And the fact that I was putting in the hard work, I was doing what I needed to do, I was successful. They saw that where I wanted to go was reasonable. And the next thing you know, I'm suddenly getting there. I jumped ahead pretty quickly. I got 2 promotions in 2 years. And a job that I thought I would have been at, it probably about that 5-year mark, I was there in 2. So sometimes just being able to speak up helps you get where you want to go. Next company, a little ways in, we were asked by my boss, those who worked under him, to say, where do you see yourself in 2 years? And so I, again, spelled out made my case for it, why I thought it was the right thing. And next thing you know, I have all of those responsibilities, the title and the pay to go with reaching a director level. I don't know that it would have happened if I hadn't said I wanted it. These are some of the benefits of speaking up for yourself, advocating for your own career. There are times, though, where you have to advocate for yourself in other ways. I've dealt with bullies. I've dealt with people who gaslight. I've dealt with people who just want to shut you down, and they're not necessarily bullies, but they just ignore you. They're just jerks. Maybe we'll just call them jerks. And all of those situations, I had to start speaking up for myself because what was going on was a bunch of BS. And I wasn't going to tolerate it. I told more than one person throughout my career, stop. Now, the guy who was gaslighting me, he would go to his boss, and his boss would go to my boss. They were peers. And my boss would come to me, and I would be very blunt with my boss about, here's what happened, so that my boss could help me push back, because pushing back against this guy was not going to work from me to him. It had to go through the chain of command. My boss pushed back on his boss. I don't think his boss ever pushed back. And then the guy retired. So I didn't have to worry about it. He just didn't believe women belonged in STEM. So he second-guessed everything I did. He would go to his boss, tell his boss I'm making the wrong decisions and Carol's incompetent, all kinds of stuff. I had to be willing to say, no, that isn't what happened. And without getting emotional or wound up and start yelling or screaming or having a temper tantrum over it, I was very good at calmly stating, okay, that's fine. Here's what happened. If you don't believe me, talk to Pete. He was in the meeting. And Pete always backed me up. And Pete thought what his coworker was doing was a bunch of crock. And he fought it as he could. But again, we were both kind of powerless. But I was willing to speak up. I had a coworker. I was the QA manager. He was the QC manager. I asked him for information. He started yelling at me about, I told you not to open that can of worms. I looked at him and said, I'm not trying to open it. I'm trying to close it. And I need this information. Are you going to give it to me? Last time he yelled at me. And he yelled at everybody. It was the last time he yelled at me because I stood my ground. I was willing to be my own best friend. I was the voice for myself. And one of the things I was a voice for was where my boundaries were. And you've got to get good at that. If you can start setting those boundaries, you can back those bullies off. You can make the jerks stop. And sometimes they're not even jerks that are doing it. I was talking to one guy, good guy. He was under enormous pressure, as was I. We had parts late from a supplier that I was at their factory. I spent 10 weeks working out of their factory, trying to make sure we got all the parts we needed on time. And it wasn't happening. There were steel shortages. It was chaos. And one day, he was between a rock and a hard place. He supported 2 assembly lines. He needed critical parts for both lines. They were both sitting in front of the paint department. They're painted different colors. Which one do you want first? They can't paint both. If you give me a deviation, I can get them both painted the same color, and I can get them to you faster. Otherwise, I can't get you anything. I can get you one, and then the other one will have to come out later. I can't do anything else. Here's the grounds. He lost it. And he's yelling at me about it. And I finally said, George, stop or I'm hanging up. And he you could hear him kind of startle. And you wouldn't really do that. Yeah, I would. How long have you known me? We'd known each other probably 10 years at this point. He went, oh. And then he calmed down. I said, I'll talk to you if you're going to be calm, but if you're going to keep yelling at me, we'll talk later. And then we talked through the options and figured out what we could do. How to make the best out of a bad situation. But I had boundaries, and I was not going to let George or Darren or any of these other guys run over those boundaries. That's how being an advocate for myself helps. So learn to become your own advocate. Speak up for what you want in your career, where you want to go, the kind of assignments you want to take on. And also advocate for your boundaries. That's what you need to do. If you want to see more on this, you can come out to my Instagram page at Carol S. Doherty, or you can join me on the Midweek Madness break, where I'll be talking some more about advocating yourself. Hope to see you around.